The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are.
I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is.
Don't think, feel. It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks, buddy. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. I always feel like I scream that first line as if I need to talk louder. So I've been thinking a lot about how I define the word success. And so I wanted to ask you first for your definition of success, and then what your life as a successful life looks like.
Wow. So interesting that you asked that question, because it's something that's actually been on my mind for a lot lately. I have this little thing installed on my Facebook, which everyone who wants to be productive in one way or another would be wise to get. It's called Facebook Newsfeed Eradicator. And so what it does is you can still use Facebook as usual, but the newsfeed, when you log in, and instead of showing like stories, it gives you a quote. An inspirational quote. A lot of them are about productivity and not being idle and not wasting time, which you usually do when you're on Facebook.
Sure.
But this one in particular says, I'm going to butcher it, but it says, the only true success is being able to spend one's life in one's own way. So I like that definition, because most of my life I spend in my own way. And the reason I prefer that is because the usual definition of success is, let's be honest, dude, let's not kid about it, it's money. It's money in the bank. And to a lesser extent, fame and renown. And at the moment, I know I've done some pretty cool things, and it's still difficult for me, because the yardstick that's always in the back of my mind is financial success, and I'm not a millionaire yet.
Right.
But I also know that that's not necessarily healthy, because, as I always say to you, I've met some dudes who are millionaires who are just total dicks, bro. Like, they're successful by every standard, or every one of society's standards, but they're just horrible, horrible people who are miserable all the time and just, chained to their jobs. Or I've got this a good friend, actually, who doesn't fall into that category of being a horrible person. He's actually a fantastic person. But he has made several $1 million. He's or tens of millions of dollars. He's very successful. And he said to me once, he lies in bed at night just worrying about his money.
Oh,
Literally worrying, like, oh man, is it going to be going down, down, down? Like, and I thought to myself, like, man, he's just trapped himself. Sure, it's great to be wealthy, but that's not how I'd want to do it. So let me, as I always do, turn it back around on you. And what is your definition of success? And do you feel you've achieved it? Don't pretend you didn't see that coming.
Well, you didn't tell me what your successful life looks like, but we'll examine that on the next bit. But so it's something I struggle with. I think about it a lot, and some days I feel like I'm extremely successful according to my definition, and other days I feel like I'm not. Now, when I was younger, it used to be really kind of weird fantasies, like, say, having sex with somebody in every country of the world I thought would have been a successful life, or never letting anyone pass me on the freeway. Just sort of weird things that I thought, oh, that's really cool and different, and maybe that's, success is doing something it's kind of like your earlier definition, where you're living life according to your terms most of the time. And if that's the definition that I'm able to operate under, I'm extremely successful there, for sure. But I think we all, especially it's the yardstick of wealth, I think becomes more of an issue as you age. And it's constantly in your mind because you see either death around you, or injuries, or accidents, or things that can threaten that invincibility that you once had, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, I need to be prepared for some shit, like when it goes down. It hasn't happened yet. I've been pretty fortunate, if that's the case. How do I do that and still maintain, the parameters of what I think is success, which is really living according to your terms, but probably giving everything that you possibly can of your gifts. You and I have talked about that before, and it's initially I think you're trying to use your gifts for personal gain,
Mm-hmm.
and at some point something turns over in your mind where you go, well, really they aren't best used on me, they're best used in elevating everyone else who could possibly benefit from them. Right now, my main source of income now is as a personal trainer, and there is nothing, even when that wasn't my main source of income, there's nothing that really compares to that in terms of one-on-one feeling like I am affecting a positive change. You know what I mean? Like, it's great to write an article and have people say, hey, great article, that really helped. Or to be in a movie or sell a painting that gives people pleasure, whatever. It's not like palpably seeing somebody get better at something or see the idea. I've taught in Korea and I've taught in the United States, and teaching in some form or fashion, which you do, is really, it's really rewarding. But in the back of my mind, especially now, it's always like, well, this is good. This is rewarding as fuck. But what's also rewarding is having a giant millionaire stack of money. And
Agreed.
Or at least I think it would be. And then I know of stories like your friend who worries about the fortune constantly. It's probably somewhere in the middle, right? It's like you don't probably need millions of dollars, but not ever having to worry about finances also has to be a great relief.
Yeah, that's the thing. Coming back to your question, you said, what to you does success? What does a successful you look like? I believe that was your question.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's ultimate freedom, ultimate freedom, and that ties into money a lot. In that, you can be a highly paid individual who is as far from free as possible. In fact, in England, the stockbrokers and bankers have this expression called the Golden Handcuffs, which refers to at the end of each year they get their bonus, right? So they always say, like, they made a lot of money, and then people say, when are you going to retire? And he says, well, I'm just gonna wait till my bonus at the end of the year, right? And then at the end of the year, the bonus comes, and his wife has wanted to put an extension on the house, so they've taken a huge family holiday, or he's bought 5 different $10,000 watches, or whatever it is, and he's basically spent that money already. So he has to wait for his next bonus. So it starts the cycle, which is known as the Golden Handcuffs.
Sure.
And so those guys aren't really free, whereas some guy who's got a passive income of $10,000 a month, right? He's got all his businesses are automated and running extremely efficiently, and he's got built-in redundancy, and his living expenses are $5,000 a month. So he takes the surplus each month and saves some and invests the rest, and he doesn't have to answer to anyone at any time. To me, that guy's free. He's free, and he's more successful to me than the guy who's like. I have a buddy who works in a bank in London, and they time his toilet breaks. Literally, I'm not making this up. They time his toilet breaks. So, do you know what I mean? It's kind of like.
I just can't even imagine. But let's take the money aspect out of it, or at least bring it down in importance. How does the moral and ethical value of your life and what you choose to do with your time figure into your idea of success? In other words, do you need to feel like you've made a huge impact?
Oh, that's a good question. The part of me that is probably conditioned by society just kicks in and says, yeah, you want to have done something good with your life, or you want to give back. And along those lines, maybe if we define we're looking for a definition of success, and I know one of the ways to find a definition for me is to look at the definition of its opposite. And for me, the definition of failure would be if I got to the end of my life and I was on my deathbed and someone asked me the question, did you fulfill your potential? If the answer was no, then I would say I failed. And if the answer was yes, then I would say I succeeded. And that ties into a lot of things. Like you mentioned gifts earlier. It's like, did I use my gifts properly? Did I give them back properly? And the funny thing I'm starting to realize is when you use your gifts properly, very often you're remunerated for it. You know, like it's just the nature of the game, right? If you're excellent at accounting and you become the best accountant you can be, you're going to get paid really well, right? Or if you're, I don't know, a great podcast host and loads of people love your stuff, people are going to pay millions of dollars to listen to something like Digital Communion. Who knows? But you know what I mean? It's like invariably living the best life you can very often goes hand in hand with at least moderate financial success.
Sure, it certainly can.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to take the financial success aspect out of it, but I know that you and I have talked fairly recently about doing a thing that's like, it could make you a lot of money, but if, you know, at the end of the day, you don't feel like you've used your gifts well, I guess you could just do it for a short time until you have a lot of money and then use your gifts.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something I struggle with almost on a daily basis, where I'm like, this is paradise and I should be happy with it as that. You know, I live by the beach. I can go surf on a Monday after training some clients. But maybe it's the nature of the beast to just want more of everything, you know? So
I have been very guilty in the past of being quite naive about a lot of things and idealistic about a lot of things. One of them being that, oh, you don't need money to be happy. And I've realized that's bullshit, dude. Like, when I was a broke ass jiu-jitsu teacher 4 years ago, making nothing, like making not even $2,000 a month, and paying a fortune in rent in London and having no money left over at the end of the month, like, I wasn't miserable. I definitely wasn't. But at the same time, like now that I'm at the point where everyday expenses don't really mean anything to me. It's only like when I start having to pay for things in the thousands of dollars and above that I start to think about it.
Right.
And the ability for me to just get on a plane and go wherever I want, whenever I want, and sit down in a restaurant and order whatever I want without thinking about the price. And those kinds of things have definitely improved the quality of my life, no doubt.
Sure.
And I'm just wondering if, when it gets to the point where I can say, you know, Thomas, if I'm honest, dude, one of the yardsticks one of the ways I know that ultimately, you know, I'm a good guy deep down inside is that I know that when I've made a lot of money, when I've made my fortune, most of it's going to be spent not necessarily on charity and stuff, but on other people, and then that includes my friends. Like, I always just think, I'd love to just take my friends on holiday, or I'd love to just call up my best buddy and say, hey, bud, you know, I know you've been struggling at your crappy job that you hate, and you don't know what you're going to do with your life, and you want to be, you're good at music, and you're a good music producer. And like, dude, there's $50,000 in an account for you. Take the year out and just go in and practice your music and see if it works for you. You know what I mean? Nothing would make me happier than doing something like that.
That's huge. Yeah.
It's kind of like my wants, besides a really nice house. You know, it doesn't even have to be big and modern and everything, just a really nice house and place to stay. And financial security that I never have to worry about it again. That's all I need. I don't need Ferraris, and I don't need yachts, and I don't need any of that bullshit, dude.
Do you need to have been the best jiu-jitsu teacher ever? Do you need to have been the most giving? I don't know. I mean, do you need to have a legacy?
So the concept of a legacy is something I find very interesting. I once heard a guy, he was speaking about the issue of children and saying why he didn't have children. And he was saying, if you think about it, having children is basically an egoic act because you're cloning yourself. In effect, that's what you do. You're cloning yourself. You're taking
Sure.
50% of your genetic material, fusing it with 50% of someone else's genetic material, and creating a little half mini you, right? And people have many reasons for doing that, right? Some it's an accident, for some it's because they want some people to look after them in their old age. For others, it's because they want a legacy, right? Now, why would you want a legacy? Think about it. If no matter how we say life ends, whether it's reincarnation or whether it's just blackness at the end of it all, or you go to heaven or hell, like what good is a legacy? What good does a legacy do you when you're gone? Like I always say it, and with the exception of some extreme outliers, like people like Benjamin Franklin or
Marcus Aurelius.
Maybe Gandhi will be included in that list one day. With an exception of extreme outliers, in 200 years, no one is going to remember your name, if it even takes that long.
Maybe a year.
Yeah. I mean, it's so. It comes back to I think I've mentioned this story to you before. Did I tell you about the Chakravartin?
No, I don't think that doesn't ring a bell.
In ancient India, there was a title that went to the person who had conquered all of the regions, right? There were different regions which had different governments, and they were always warring, but they all existed under one specific leader who was the Chakravartin, basically the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
And the story goes that the Chakravartin, he wanted his name. There were these famous mountains that existed in heaven that were made out of gold, and he wanted his name inscribed on them because all the Chakravartins had their name inscribed on these mountains. And so when he died, he went to these mountains, and then there was a person who helped with the inscription process. And he took him to the mountains, and he saw that the mountains were just covered in name after name after name of Chakravartins that had existed before. And he was so depressed and saw the futility of the whole thing that he just said, I don't even want my name on there. It's pointless. And that's what I realized, like, that drive for legacy, and I want to be remembered, and I want to be the best. And it's futile. It's just your ego. It's just your ego wanting to exist after you're gone, right? And I'm still affected by it sometimes, but it's much less than when I was, say, 20 or 25, when I was like, yeah, man, my name has to live on in blood and stone. Do you know what I mean? It's like, is that really like, that just comes between me and experiencing the moment and enjoying myself. But I think for me, a more intelligent way to look at it is, what am I going to do with this life that makes me feel good on my deathbed, not others that come after me wondering about
Reputation.
Who was that guy? Who
Right.
was that amazing guy? Who's got a foundation with his name on the side? Like, come on, dude. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I told you I'm a big fan of Marcus Aurelius Meditations.
And funny enough, that book keeps coming up a lot. Just yesterday, my girlfriend read me an excerpt from it, so I know I've got to read that book, dude. It's online.
It's just so powerful, and he talks at length about this idea that people lust after, accolades and renown and legacy, and he just talks about exactly what you did. That think about the infinite time behind you and the infinite time ahead of you. And to think that, being remembered is important based on the vastness of time is really, it's obviously an egotistical thing, but it's also just it's almost like a primitive thought, But, that being said, I think the only people that change the world are the ones that actually think it can be done. And when I think about legacy, for me personally, it's not like I hope people will remember me, but I would like to do great acts in order to change things for the better.
Mm-hmm. To that, I would say that a very interesting thing about life. It's, how people always say life's a funny thing, right? You always say that expression, life's a funny thing, when they're pondering. And whenever the thought that makes me say that out loud, life's a funny thing, more often than not, is the fact that I'm realizing that such a strange thing, Tom. The more you let go of your desires, the more likely you are to get them, right? And if that desire, for example, Marcus Aurelius, I fucking guarantee you that guy was not desperate to have a legacy, and yet here we are, hundreds and hundreds of years later, two guys talking about him, and he has one of the best legacies there are, right?
Yeah.
There is, and it's the strangest thing about life. It's kind of like how when you're wealthy, money just keeps flowing to you. The
Right.
wealthiest people I know, it's the strangest fucking thing. Deals and stuff just come to them. Or when you're famous, you become more famous. Or when you're happier, you usually just get happier because life just starts flowing more. And it all comes down to that same concept for me, which is it's only when I let go of having to have these things, when I let go of these desires and just get in the flow, that I'll have them. And that's one of the things I'm working on now. And it's hard because it's a constant war with that programming, which is, you've got to reach out and take what you want in life. You got to fucking grind. You got to, you know what I mean? Those two things are always at war in my psyche. I've spoken about this many times before, and I'm just trying to figure that out. I mean, if you have any insights into that, I'd appreciate them.
Well, it's always important to remember that no matter how great of a man Marcus Aurelius was, he still gave birth to Commodus.
Good point. Good point.